And we are up. This is the Our Town podcast, and tonight is it's going to be a good one. I'm excited about this episode because it's really, this was not on purpose, but if you go back to episode 37 with Rachel Sullivan, she was from the Solid Ground Counseling Center. We talked about mental health. We talked about people that have been abused or disaffected in some way in life. And that was a good episode. Then in 40, we talked to Cynthia Parker from the National Children's Advocacy Center. And that was cool to hear how in Huntsville, there was a young girl whose case essentially created the bore out of that, the Advocacy Center, this whole concept. And how Huntsville rallied around that. And now we are the national center. Mm-hmm. Meeting these needs, and these multidisciplinary teams came together where if a child has been abused, then it facilitates a lot of federal, state, and local agencies to support that child. Then in 46 was Sonia Baylor. She is one who was a victim of abuse from her biological parents, for her foster parents, and then ultimately was reunited with her biological mother. But that was a telling story from firsthand experience. So here we are now at episode 51. And in a moment, I'll introduce our guest. But if you're just happening through the fact that we're going to talk to Brandon Bishop tonight, and you're just checking out the podcast for the first time, if you type in Our Town Podcast on just about any audio platform, you're going to find it. The video side is on YouTube, Spotify, and I think Anchor now. At least on my side, Anchor appears to be doing the video as well. So there's at least 3 video platforms. Everything else you can imagine is on audio. And then we post on Instagram and Facebook, sometimes TikTok, and LinkedIn. But then I will change the content and the clips that I show based a little bit by platform. I try to reserve LinkedIn. When I post stuff on LinkedIn, it's very purposeful. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be one of those guys that gets kicked off for posting things that are not kicked off, but people are like, look, LinkedIn should be preserved for business, education purposes, nonprofits and stuff. And sometimes the fun things are on the Instagram, Facebook side. So anyway, give us a follow, give us a like, all that kind of stuff. This is episode 51, so it's building. And it's been a lot of fun in the last 10 months. And so with no further ado, here's Brandon Bishop.
Hey, thanks for having me out.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Crazy day.
Crazy day, for sure.
Every day's a crazy day.
Yeah, it's understatement right there.
Yeah. So I love your resume. I think I mentioned this to John Allen in episode 26, where I'm often very jealous of people who are much more involved in the community than I am or should be, and it really does encourage me and inspires me to do more. And if you look at Brandon's LinkedIn profile, you've been involved in a lot of different nonprofits and just causes, extending yourself, right? And
sure. Living
a selfless life, and along with your wife, Trina. Mm-hmm.
So,
but principally the reason you're here tonight is to talk, and this is cool because a lot of what I had just mentioned before, especially in the National Children's Advocacy Center, is down in Huntsville. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be talking to Karen Peterson from Wellstone soon here, probably in the next month. And then I would say where Rachel Sullivan's practice is kind of on the border of Madison and Huntsville. But you are here from Madison County for basically the foster and adoption agency or association.
Association. So we're the local support resource association. But Madison County, if you can see on the shirt here, MCFAPA, we call it lovingly, and it's a mouthful. But the Madison County Foster Adoptive Parent Association.
Okay. We've had, I should at least give a shout out to Tina Cooley from Caddyshack, which is, we talked about adopting kitty cats, and they're based over at Low Mill. Mm-hmm. That was that seems forever ago. I think that was episode 21. But now it's the human side, right? Now where we talk about, and it's, in prepping for this episode, I think back more and more to people that I know that were adopted or have been through the foster system. And the more I appreciate those that extended some service and love to that person, right? To that person, whether it's, friends and colleagues, associates of mine. And now preparing for this interview, even more so. That's been ratcheted up as I really have dived in to, at a really important function.
Yeah. I mean, that's love is all it takes. I mean, a little bit of love, a lot of bit of patience, I like to say.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I feel like that's been my calling for years. Hence, the outreach I've done over the years. But we'll have you a foster parent before the end of this episode.
We're fostering cats right now, but
it's a little bit different.
It's different. So I wasn't necessarily. Let's do this. I have an idea of where I want to officially start this interview, but let's talk about MCFAPA.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little bit about what your role is? Maybe a little bit about some of the other contributors that contribute to its success, and just whatever typical 3 to 5 minute overview you would give to somebody who's unfamiliar.
Yeah. So, of course, I mentioned MCFAPA. It's one thing that we cover that's not in our name is kinship, but it's foster adoptive kinship families. So we're the local county association. So we're a chapter member of the state association, which I serve on the board as well. But current president of our board of directors, we help out as far as support for our families and the means of monthly trainings. We actually have one coming up tomorrow night. Monthly trainings where they can get their continuing education hours. We've got we operate the Den at DHR, which is Department of Human Resources. So when a child comes into foster care, usually it's an emergency type situation. They're pulled out of the home, don't have anything to come with them. So our goal with that closet there is to provide those bare essentials, kind of whole play on words with the Den, and really provide them, a duffel bag with clothes, PJs, shoes, everything's new, whatever can get them through the first few days with the foster family until they can get to another resource like Our Kids Closet at the Rock Family Worship Center or others here around the town. But our goal is really to advocate for foster families, adoptive families, kinship families, and really just be that sounding board for more, I guess you could say in short, more resources, more people, more love, more patience, whatever it may be that's all wrapped up into one. And we do that here locally. I've been a part of the board for, call it, I guess, 4 years or so, roughly. It was dormant for years. Came on, helped another couple that was running at the time, kind of get the feet off the ground, I guess, per se, and kind of went through a revamp period. And luckily, I mean, it's taken us a few years, but we've gotten to that point where people know us, they reach out to us constantly just for help or support or advice.
So as I had mentioned in talking to Cynthia Parker, right, from the National Children's Advocacy Center, do some percentage of those that come to the Madison County come through that? Do you have a tie into or a relationship with them in helping kids that unfortunately have to go through that process, be triaged, if you will, figure out what's needed, and then maybe they come your way or you're helping to place them?
Yeah, that's kind of the common misconception with us is we're not an agency, we're not an orphanage, we're not a placing agency. I get that all the time, especially my coworkers, which is kind of a running joke. But no, we're just the resource arm. So we're kind of the bridge between DHR and our families.
Okay.
So we try to connect our families with all the resources out there, the NCAC being one of them. But unfortunately, a lot of our children come from, bad backgrounds, not on their own accord, but through just situations they're in. And unfortunately, they have to go through, tons of counseling, NCAC. We've had children in our home that's had to go through, forensic interviews and just all the crazy things that kids shouldn't have to go through at that age. But yeah, so we try to link up with anyone in the community that can help, whether it's on the medical side, the counseling side, the financial side, whatever it may be. Our goal is just to connect and keep those families supported so they'll continue doing the good work.
So then I'm trying. I think I'm getting this where your need came along to really on the supporting the foster families, trying to recruit more foster families, educate foster families on, hey, you can do it. You don't have to assume you can't do it because you think you're too selfish or you're impatient or you don't have enough money or you don't have enough time. So your association really kind of grew out of that need to say, hey, the supply is too limited or it's too small, right? Of potential fosters. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it. I don't know exactly how long ago the Madison County chapter started. But I know it went dormant years ago. I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, whatever that would be, is when they tried to start it back up. And the biggest goal is the training, because as a foster family, you have to have 15 hours each year to keep your license, and that can be hard because depending on your worker, you may have to have so many that's in person, so many that can be done through video, webinars, whatever it may be. So we help satisfy that throughout the whole year. But we offer childcare, dinner, all these things to help support that family and kind of give them respite. So that's that's how we came to be, I guess, years ago. But especially nowadays, because it seems like the numbers keep steadily increasing as far as children going into the foster system. But one big stat, and I'm not sure what the most updated stat is, but roughly 50% of foster families quit in their first year because they don't feel like they have the support, or they just get overwhelmed and don't know who to reach out to, and they just, hey, I can't do this, and they quit. So our goal is to help on the front end by going to other agencies and those that are doing the training classes initially and saying, hey, we're here for you. Reach out to us. Let us know how we can help, and here's how we'll help you immediately out of the gates.
Okay. I think that's a pretty good primer. Now, this is one of those things. It's one thing to foster animals.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about human beings, I think that it's imperative. I'm going to assume, I think this is probably a dumb assumption. There's dumb questions and there's dumb assumptions that really, if you're married, both, or if you have a partner, you both have to be all in on this. You both have to be committed.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start with you and Trina. And let's go back to, let's hear the story of how you met and how you knew, one another was right for each other. And then ultimately, when you had just mentioned a little bit earlier that this was something that you figured you wanted to do, you wanted to get involved. Maybe, so let's talk about, was that when you were still single, or has this all happened in your relationship with Trina? So, but let's talk about her. Where did you meet her? And then we'll go from there.
So we have a funny story. So we both went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So I met her originally through, it was a co-ed business fraternity, Alpha Kappa Psi. So went through, she'd been in the fraternity for, I guess, a year or so longer than me. Hung out, did all the brother activities, even though there's sisters, I guess you could say, in there as well. But hung out a lot, partied a lot, I guess, to say, and never dated or anything. We went our separate ways. I never wanted to be in Huntsville, and here I have been, on and off 15 years. It's too close to home. But my goal was to go somewhere else. So long story short, I got a job in Huntsville. Still had a place in Tuscaloosa. Was driving back and forth from my parents' house that Stevenson. It's about an hour from here.
That's near Scottsboro.
Yeah. Other side of Scottsboro. And so I guess that time when my apartment was up in Tuscaloosa, I started looking around in Huntsville. I was like, well, I'm making this drive every single day, plus tons of miles extra on my car. So reached out. I think Trina had actually reached out because she got a job here with Target Distribution Center. And she's like, hey, I just bought a house, renting out the rooms if you need a place. I said, well, when can I move in? She's like, whenever. I said, I'll be there tomorrow. So I have my blow-up mattress, set up in a room. So Trina.
So real quick, were the members of your fraternity then still kind of connected, and you kind of maybe you had a page on Facebook or something, right? Where you kind of still knew of each other, keeping tabs of one another.
Yeah, Facebook was a little different back then, but
sure.
But no, we all stay connected pretty well. Just those friend groups, brother groups. I mean, we were pretty tight knit. So Trina started as my landlord, I like to say. So started renting a room from her. Friends, doing our own thing, I guess. And fast forward, say 8-10 months or so later, started dating. Was kind of inevitable, and then for some odd reason, my rent more than tripled because next thing you know, it's a mortgage, and we got a bunch of kids.
Wow.
But yeah, so she's great. But we kind of funny story. I think shortly after we started dating, she had a scrapbook or something she made me, and probably 90% of those pictures came from college. We hung out that much, but just never realized it. So I guess it was meant to be from the beginning. But that's how we started was then, and here we are now.
So, looking back on your college years and your fraternity years with her, were there some service projects and other things that you guys did and you didn't realize it at the time, where you appreciated her work ethic or her thoughtfulness or her dependability, where then later it started to make sense? Like, okay, this is why I have fallen for her.
Yeah, I mean, she's a hard worker no matter what she does. But, I mean, Alpha Kappa Psi, we were... each pledge class had their own service project they had to do. We did a lot with Habitat for Humanity there in Tuscaloosa. And Trina, of course, I've slept a few times since then, but she was on the executive board or committee, rather, for the fraternity. So she was, she held a leadership position and was involved in a lot. And then, of course, her background was, or degree was operations management. So she started doing that for Target Distribution, leading groups of 30, 40, 50 people, and, straight out of college. So she's always had that hard work ethic, and still to this day, from home life to work life to MCFAPA life to whatever it is, she's constantly grinding it out.
You guys have been married, like, I think, 10 years, almost 10 years, or
10 years. This past July, we celebrated in Hawaii. So
okay. Fun. So then you get married, and then your oldest. So just spoiler alert, right? Even though you're foster parents, you do end up having 3 of your own. But it was after you. I don't want to say you gave up, and I'm going to have you fill in the story. But there was a frustration. There was an inability to have your own kids. You decide you're going to foster. And then lo and behold, you sign up for for courses to be certified, and then she finds out she's pregnant.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the conversations that went on between you two in, hey, maybe we should foster. And then part of that is, if you're willing to share, was this something where they medically said, hey, you're never going to have kids, or it's highly unlikely you're going to have kids? Kind of what led you to this route of, all right, we're out of options here, we're going to have to foster?
Well, we've got a house full of kids, so it definitely wasn't a medical thing. But so,
well, what were you told that?
No, we were both healthy. So we did the whole 9 as far as getting checked out by medical professionals. Both healthy, both able to have children. Just wasn't the right time, I guess. But we had been married, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years maybe.
Right.
Started, trying to have kids. Wasn't the right time. Went through all of that, and then we were like, well, let's look into adoption. And just as a, I don't want to say a worst case, but a what if we can't, then how can we? So we looked into adoption. You had to be married 3 years in the state of Alabama to be able to even start, the adoption process. So we said, okay, well, what about foster care? And growing up, I never knew anyone, at least publicly, that was a foster child. Knew of one person that had been adopted in my church, and that was about it. So I had no connection to it in my previous years. And so we started, kind of looking around, kicking the tires per se. It was, I call it those God signs, because I would go home to visit my family. Never knew anybody that fostered, and then next thing you know, there's a sign in the neighbor's yard that says, think about being a foster parent today or something. One of my friends, whose name is Foster, would call more often, so he's popping up on my phone, and you just see the Foster name, so it just gets that rolling in your brain. And when people tell me how, or ask me, how did you become a foster family? I always tell them Celine Dion is the one that pushed us over the edge.
Really?
And they're like, oh, the singer? I said, yeah. And they're like, you know her? No, not at all. But Trina had recorded a Home for the Holidays special that comes on during the holidays. I guess she was hosting that year. And, it's sob stories, but beautiful stories of adoption and just, finding that family. And so she's sitting on one side of the couch, I'm on the other, and we both look at each other with tears in the eyes and like, all right, we need to call and figure this thing out. So,
Wow.
so probably, I don't know, a couple of months later, went to an orientation class, decided to hop in. And it's 10 weeks of classes, and probably week 6 or 7-ish, found out she was pregnant.
Yeah.
So we decided to stick it out and get that license, which was a struggle initially because we were guinea pigs with the agency at the time. Didn't know it, but we stuck it out, got our license. And then Hayden, our firstborn, was, I guess, about 6 months old before we got our first foster placements. And then we've had some kids in our house ever since then.
Yeah, you had mentioned in blogs and stuff, or articles you've written, that you wanted to have some time with him before taking that step.
Yeah, we the agency we were with said, hey, if you don't have a placement when he's born, we suggest you having a few months of that time. But we took maybe 3 or 4 months and then said, hey, we're ready. And a few months later, we got 2 kids.
Interesting that, I don't know what I mean, I guess obviously adoption is different, but there wouldn't be as many requirements or constraints on how long you've lived in Alabama to be a foster, right, as compared to adoption.
No, you could be
one day
divorced, one person, single, I mean, working. I mean, there's not too many restrictions there compared to adoption.
Was there ever any hesitation on either of your part? Like, are you the type of people that, like, let's say you go and you're looking at a car and you say, you know what, we're going to go sleep on it for a couple of days. We're not going to be impulse buyers here. Did you, any of you, have any reservations? As you had these initial ideas, it sounds great. Celine Dion's, touched your heart. But then, do you wake up the next day or the next day, are you sure about this? Did one of you kind of have to re-energize that excitement in the other? Or is it, no, you're all in?
We still have to do that. So we still have to get up. And
what are we doing?
What are we doing? No, it's. I mean, we had that period of time where all those signs were in front of us. That was several months or so, and it's us. Of course, the house was a lot quieter then. So we had a lot of time to think about it, and the orientation classes are designed to kind of show you a glimpse into what it could be. And then at the time they were called GPS classes, which were group preparation selection, I think is what it stood for. But they're designed to, to go through anything and everything that could happen in foster care, which it still doesn't prepare you enough for everything. But to the tune of, hey, here's these things. Can you parent these kids or can you do it? And there's several people that were in our class that dropped out, say, hey, it's just not right for me right now. But like I said, we had a lot of hiccups and things paperwork we had to redo over and over and over again. Just got to the point where we were frustrated and like, is this for us? We're trying to get it. We're not there yet. But we stuck it out and we said, hey, we're this far. Let's do it. 'Cause there's kids out there that need us.
Yeah. Now that you're kind of, you've been in the system and you've had up to 25, right? Different foster placements. Is that right?
Yeah. The number is kind of fuzzy, but I think right at 25 that's been in our home long-term or short-term. But we've done respite for numerous others, and then plus our own kids.
Do you have an idea, or can you educate on how common it is across the country in different states where there are groups like yours that are doing what you're doing, or how rare or common is the Madison County?
Well, there's foster. I mean, there's so many groups that are supporting foster families, foster children all across. Associations are fairly common, state by state. I'm not too certain how others are doing it. I know Georgia has a pretty good association themselves, but outside of that, you've got agencies like here locally. Some you've heard of, like Kids to Love, that assist. You've got, Legacy Health Connections is one that you've probably never heard of, but they're doing great work with ethnic hair care, just providing services for free for families that need it. And then you've got, numerous closets around. Our Kids Closet, Katie's Closet just opened at First Baptist Meridianville. You've got Focal here locally, that's Foster Children's Alliance of North Alabama, and their primary goals, I guess I should say, is to, one, provide Christmas presents each year for foster children, and then two, to help normalize their experience by offering, scholarships in a sense for extracurriculars. So we've utilized them numerous times for, anything from wrestling fees to soccer fees to, I think we might have gotten their assistance with a space camp for one of our kids.
Yeah.
So that there's so many things, unless you're in the village, we say, a lot of things you won't know about unless you're in the thick of it. But there's some that are more visual and vocal than others, but there's always someone somewhere, no matter how loud they are, how quiet they are, that's doing the good work behind the scenes.
That's one of the myths, right? One of the myths is that some people are only in it for the money.
Yeah.
When reality, like you just said, there's amount of money that comes along with it. Okay. But that doesn't account for everything for that child and what that child may end up wanting to do, and soccer fees or this or that, right?
Yeah.
My understanding is that Medicaid is there to help on the, to supplement or provide for healthcare and things like that. But ultimately, it's not a money grab.
Oh, no.
And then a lot of this does end up falling on you, and essentially that might be one barrier. How much is the financial thing a reason that in that first year 50% of the people back out?
I can't say for certain, but I would imagine the bulk of that is coming from just the mental drainage, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Because kids are hard regardless, but when you take a child that, every child that comes into the foster system is a trauma child, because they're being taken from a parental unit or a family member, something they're used to, no matter how bad it was, and they're being thrown into a family that they have no idea who they are. There's these strange people coming to pick me up. So there's a lot that they're battling with. Some may be drug addicted or residual. There we go. From drug use, alcohol abuse, whatever it may be. So when they come to us, there's a lot they're dealing with. So they have counseling, they have therapy, which a lot of that's covered through Medicaid in the state. But as far as the financial part of it, if you want a child to have a normal life and you have more than a few kids in your house, it gets costly.
What's your? Do you all have? This might be a tough question. A limit on the so you have 3 of your own kids, but obviously when you started fostering some of your younger ones, particularly your youngest, what's her name again? Ashlyn. She wasn't around yet. She's young enough, but what is? Do you guys have kind of a limit of we're not going to have more than 4 or 5 or 6 children in the home at the same time?
We do, but we just throw it to the wayside all the time. So when we first started fostering, we said, hey, we're only going to foster 1 child, maybe 2 if it's a sibling group. And we said, okay, we'll do ages, I think we said 0 to 10 years old at the time. So our very first placements were 2 kids that were, I think, 6 and 11 or something. So definitely outside of what we said initially. But it was a sibling group, great kids, and had them for about 1.5 years. And then they went home. That was our first, loss through this. They were still close by. We still communicate. We, still talk to the mom and, to this day. But, that's something where, okay, the next go around, and I can't remember the order now, but we're like, all right, well, we went through some challenges with our oldest at the time, because that's one thing you don't think about is, okay, once they hit 13 with you, the state helps cover childcare for up to that age. But then once they're that age or older, like, oh, you're on your own. So then we had to say, okay, is he mature enough to stay at home, or, childcare, that's extra cost in our pocket, whatever it may be. And so we're like, okay, maybe we're going to only do school age kids, or 5 to, whatever, 5 to 10, I think we said the next go round. But, fast forward to today, I think the most kids we had dropped off at our house was 4. And only because we knew a few of the kids, they came from another home. But I think it just depends on the mood each day. And it definitely, constantly changes.
Yeah.
Because you can tell DHR, hey, I'm only going to take one child this age range, and they'll call you the next day with 6 kids outside of your age range. So, I mean, there's such a need for it that they're constantly looking for someone to take these children that they know, most foster parents are good. I know there's a lot that get a bad rap in the media or, the news or whatever, but most of us are good people. And they're like, hey, we're going to reach out regardless, because there is such a lack of foster parents here locally anyway.
Yeah. One interesting thing, I don't know if you listened to Sonia Baylor talk in episode 46, but it was interesting where even though on the other side with the foster parents that weren't good people, right, and they were abusing them, she was still very thankful that they took all 4 of their sibling group and kept them together versus being split up.
Yeah.
And so if there was the good that came out of that, or how you deal with something like that, right? There's abuse going on, but trying to stay positive, not dwell on the past and move on with your life, and at least say, well, at least I got to stay with my sisters.
Yeah. And that was why we took our first placements when we got that call, because it was 2 brothers, and we're like, it's a little bit outside of our range, but we had bunk beds, so we had the room. We just, wanted to stick with one initially because we'd never done it before, but it was 2 brothers, and we're like, the siblings need each other, especially in that moment. And unfortunately, there's so many that get split up.
Yeah.
They try to keep them together, but and that's why we've taken. We had a sibling group of 3 that came to our house that were with us for a good while, and that's why we brought them in. We said, well, we'll make it work, because the youngest was definitely outside of our age range we were hoping to have. But we didn't want to split them up. We said, we'll figure this out, and we'll keep them here. And then, just a few years ago, we had 2 teens. We had never taken teens before because, teens are scary is kind of the consensus, but they were probably some of the best kids we had. And, we told them, like, hey, we'll take you for the week. Or we didn't tell them. We told DHR, like, hey, we'll, take them for the weekend, because it's hard to place kids over the weekend. So we took them in, good kids. And then Monday, DHR calls because we say, hey, we'll take them for these few days. And we said, we talked to them and said, do you want to stay here, or we'll make it work. So we got another bed down from the attic, rearranged rooms and stuff, and they were with us for 9 months or so.
Really?
So it's like I said, every day is different, and it just depends on the need and what's going on at the time, I guess, as to if we can help.
My eyes were opened as I read something that you wrote. And I think you were addressing different myths, right? You kind of wrote a blog and said, okay, here's a myth. We had talked about some of those things, and you kind of went on to provide facts, and essentially telling people, hey, you can do this. But one thing I honestly stopped me in my tracks was when I consider adoption or fosters, my mind immediately is there's no more contact with the birth parents, and off they go they're trying to forge a new life.
Yeah.
And they're trying to find, in case in foster, a permanent adoption scenario, or the foster ends up adopting them. But you made a comment in there, or kind of stressed that there also is a chance for reuniting with those birth parents, and not only reuniting, but you reach out to the birth parents and establish a relationship.
Yeah.
I'd really like to spend some time on that, because that kind of blew my mind. I hadn't really thought of that angle, because there's sometimes I know people who've been adopted and they reached out to their birth parents, and sometimes it goes swimmingly well, and then other times it's an absolute disaster that they were warned, don't do it.
Yeah.
But can you now talk through, and I think you even said, like, hey, if you're a foster, you have to have the courage, you need to reach out to the birth parents.
Yeah, that was one thing that Trina and I, early on, we said, hey, we want to co-parent, I guess you could call it, with the birth family. But that's the one thing, too, because when we first started fostering, I can remember checking the kids in shortly after we got them into church, and one of the ladies there was like, oh, I was like, are these your foster kids? And I'm like, yeah, we just got them last week or something. Oh, when are you going to adopt them? And I'm like, it's not how this works. Like, and honestly, we were kind of naive to that fact early on too. I guess before we got into classes and everything. But some people you just think, okay, foster care is just adoption. It's like the same thing. But the goal with foster care is to remove that child from a situation, and then for that, DHR in our state to offer those families services to get them in a place where they can parent that child.
Right.
So the goal is always reunification. So, they always want to reunify with the parents. That's not always the case. Sometimes they drop their kids off. They don't care. I mean, I don't see how you can do that, but they do it. They did it just a few days ago, I heard. But that's something where reunification with them is always the goal. And then, adoption's usually a secondary goal or a concurrent plan, they call it. But early on, we said, hey, we want to partner with the birth family, pour into them, do whatever we can to help them if it's safe, because it's not always safe. And if we can, help, I guess parent them in a sense, and help them with whatever they need. So our very first kids, and at the time, it's kind of funny looking back over all the kids we've had, because we said, man, these kids are rough. And then we've had rougher and rougher and rougher. But with them, their mom was and she won't mind me sharing this story, but she was at the rescue mission, downtown rescue mission, for addiction, and her kids couldn't stay there. They didn't have the dorms they have now, and I think the age they had to be put into foster care. So they were at a house I think previous to ours, and so they came to us, and she was at the mission going through a 1-year residential treatment program. And with foster care, you have, the child has weekly visits or however often visits, based on what DHR says and the parents and everybody. It's an agreement. So they were doing weekly visits, and they were already set up before they came to our house. So they would come, and we call them transporters, and in the foster care world, but it's a company that's vetted to transport children to visits or doctor's appointments. Basically, if the foster family can't do it, DHR, they're bound to provide, transportation. So the transporter was coming to the house, picking them up, taking them to the rescue mission, bringing them back and everything. So after a little bit, we said, hey, do you mind if we start, transporting? And they're like, well, if you want to, that's totally fine. We said, well, we want to interact with the mom and get to know her. So we did that. So just through drop-offs and then talking on the phone or whatever it may be. And then we, kind of over time, she got to where she could have passes out from the mission and day trips or whatever. So she would come to church with us, come over to the house and hang out. We went to Disney on Ice together. She got to go see that with the kids. She came to Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, we just, she's part of the family. So that was great. And just, being able to have that relationship, but that's not always been the case.
Right.
So, there's definitely been times where we don't want you to know where we live. Like, I mean, it's just that bad of a situation. But that's a huge benefit to that parent, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have a support group, a support network to assist them. They may not even have family. Her family had passed from addiction as well and things. And so we wanted to be that person that they could call, she's called us for help over the years, or just things that's popped up that we've been able to assist with. And, but if it wasn't us, I mean, there's no one else really out there.
Have there been some, I was thinking about the Disney on Ice, right? You have this great evening where the foster parents, or I'm sorry, the biological parent is involved, and are there some difficult kind of moments? Okay, it's time to say goodbye, and kind of separation, and it gets extremely emotional and difficult for both sides, right? We're like, no, you're staying here, and no, mom, no, dad, don't go, right?
Yeah, that's an issue more times than not. Just those transitions, and we hear it time and time again where kids will go for visits, where the foster parent's not there. They go, and usually that's and I can see the parents' viewpoint, I guess, because they're getting to see their kids just for this block of hours each week. So that's the honeymoon. Like, hey, come on, here's snacks and drinks and sodas and toys and whatever it may be. And then they're removed from it after a few hours, can go back to the foster home, where it's usually structured and rules and there's stability there, and it can be troubling. I mean, kids can kind of regress, go back to past behaviors that they may not have had in a while, or it may just trigger something, or the parents may say something, and then next thing you know, you're spending a few hours on the floor with a screaming kid that's crying, trying to console them and let them know, hey, you'll get to see him again next week.
So as you've been talking, I'm trying to reconcile in my mind, like, where have I gone wrong in understanding the foster system? I think in my mind, it's like, okay, you have every kid needs to be housed somewhere. Mm-hmm. So if you have like an orphanage, if you will, and there's kids that are there waiting to be adopted, and then therefore if they're not there and they're in someone's home, then that's kind of a foster thing, because you're actually getting to be with a family. Mm-hmm. I think that's my skewed understanding of this. And now I'm realizing I've been completely ignorant to what fostering is really about, where there is this interaction and a relationship with the biological parents or parent.
Yeah.
And there is that hopefully they're rehabilitating, getting over an addiction, or becoming self-reliant, whatever it is, so that they can they actually do want their child back, but when it's appropriate and when they can take care of them.
Yeah, it's
because ultimately it's about the child.
Exactly.
Right? And I know that's that I'm sure, and listening to some podcasts in preparation for today's interview, you never want bureaucracy or any other element to get in the way of, like, wait a minute, this is about the child and what's best for this child, right? That's why we all exist.
Yeah, and that was one thing early on, because hence the shirt "Get Attached."
Yeah.
Early on, I said, what am I going to do when they go back, or if they go back? However I looked at it, I'm like, I just don't know. I get too attached. I don't know if I could do it. And a friend of mine, she had fostered before, and she's actually adopted through foster care in Tennessee. But she said, you got to remember, it's not about you. It's about that kid. Mm-hmm. And it's not what you want. Like, think about what that kid's going through. Like, here I am in my 30s, and okay, I'm stressing because I don't know if I can let this kid go back to a family that he knows, when in reality, that kid, while they're with me, they're struggling with XYZ. I mean, whatever it may be. There's so many things that's going through their mind that shouldn't go through my mind at my age, much less a 8-year-old that's in my home. And there's just, you have to kind of step back and think, okay, what's best for this child? It's about the kid. It's not about me. Yeah, I'll get over it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But honestly, it's just, hey, how best can we set this kid up for success? And, try to get them the resources, get the family the resources. That's why we're pushing, when we have children with us, that we can have that relationship to advocate for the birth family too. I never thought I would do that. Like, oh, well, we're for the kids. They're bad people and all this stuff. It's not the case. I mean, they're product of bad situations, bad choices. I mean,
yeah.
It's I've got a friend that says, you're 5 steps or 5 choices away from being homeless, or whatever it may be. So we could be in that same situation, and it's like, how can we help you be a better parent? And if we've done our job, we've done our job. And I hate to say on to the next one, but if there's another child that needs us, we want to be there and provide the same.
Help me understand. When a child comes into your home, I would, and I'm trying to imagine what the categories are. If you could categorize what you see, as far as you're maybe going to have a child that just clings to you, and they're just glad to be in a home and with someone, and they're going to just love you kind of unconditionally and don't want to let go. Then I would say on the other side, there's the, they're trying to run away or whatever, and just angry and acting out. And then you might have some where just don't talk, don't communicate. They're just become numb. Are those fair? Those are fair categories. And then what are some others that you've seen that maybe even surprised you?
Well, you've described every child that we've had in our home so far. So
you've experienced it all.
Oh yeah, we've had it all. It's I jokingly tell other people that when you think you've seen it or heard it all, Jerry Springer and Maury Povich end up on your front porch, and then they're in your home. But that's probably a bad joke. But
No, I'm with you, though.
That's what I tell people because
Well, unfortunately, most people are going to be like, so who's Maury Povich and who's Jerry Springer?
yeah, this is
Or
just,
Phil Donahue.
oh yeah, Phil Donahue, man. Just Jerry, and was it who's the daddy or whatever. But
Right.
But yeah, so we've had kids. Well, one I spoke about not too long ago to someone is he was probably our roughest kid, I guess you could say. Most challenging child, but also the hardest to let go, which I didn't think would be a thing. But when he came to us, he would come up to you and you would just, you could touch him or brush his shoulder and he would just withdraw. And so even though we didn't know the background, because a lot of times you don't know the background unless, DHR can find it some way, but didn't really know much of the background, but we did know from that interaction, okay, he's been abused or something's happened. And this child, I can remember I was in South Carolina for work, flew back home Friday, Saturday morning. My wife was working at the time and, the kids are in the house and he's like, I want to go swimming. And I was like, okay, well just wait till Trina gets home. We'll go swimming or whatever. So the daycare for the kids was having a back to school bash. They had the water slides and all that stuff, the inflatables. So I want to go swimming. So I was like, all right, Trina's on her way home. Get your swimsuits on. Mm-hmm. Immediately starts like meltdown mode, just
Really?
screaming, crying, like literally. If I had timed it, it might have been an hour and a half, 2 hours straight.
Really?
I mean, we had to physically pick him up, put him in the car, strap him in the car seat. We got to the place, had to unstrap him, pick him up out, and then he comes in and spent the first half of the party underneath the playground equipment and just crying, everything, couldn't do anything. And then next thing you know, it's like a switch flipped and he's going up and down the water slide. Boom, 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 boom. And I mean, there was nights where, I still don't think we ever knew his triggers necessarily, but, and sometimes you never will know, but there would be times we had a beanbag chair in the bedroom and we would just, I've had to literally bear hug him on a beanbag chair to keep him from hurting himself in the room. And, so, we had those, but then he was with us 8-10 months. And over time it got to where it was like the weird side hug and you got like the church hug or whatever they call it. And it's like, you gradually see the growth in him. And then he got to where he's like, hey, Brandon, can I give you a hug? I'm like, you can have a hug anytime you want to. And he's just coming up and just giving hugs all the time. So to see that level of growth from where he came from when he was first came to us, I guess. And then when he left us, he went to adoptive home and they're doing well. It's kind of crazy to see, but I'm like, man, that was the roughest kid, but that was the one that you saw the most growth in. You saw, okay, hey, maybe I am making a difference somewhere.
Yeah.
And so those, he was one of the hardest ones to let go, but we've had behaviors. You mentioned running away. We've had one that got violent and said they were running away and can't really stop them. But once they got to stop sign, realized how far they were, like, all right, I'm going back. We've had,
How old was that kid?
10-ish, somewhere in there. Well, I guess I can tell part of the story. I won't mention much, but so she was with us probably a year and a half, and unfortunately, there's disruptions. So we try to minimize disruptions as foster families. So DHR tries to find a family that's going to best suit the needs of that kid. The family hopefully is asking all the right questions on the front end to make sure that they can parent that child, or at least has the resources. But, she was with us a year and a half. Saw a lot of growth in her too, but that was one of those situations where the parents weren't safe to try to build that relationship with. And, that's one where we set up a Google Voice number. And so they don't have her number or anything, like nothing like that. And tried to do our best we could to partner, but they just had demons that they couldn't work out. And so unfortunately, just over time, just from what they're telling her that's going to happen, but knowing it's not going to happen, whether it's, hey, you're coming back tomorrow or whatever it may be. She had a lot going on. And unfortunately we had to disrupt and pull her out of our home. with the police. I mean, it was one of those situations where DHR wasn't necessarily helping us at the time. And so we had to kind of push them along a little bit more by saying, hey, got the police there. And it was a whole ordeal. Felt bad about it, but we had to do what was safe for our family.
Yeah.
And so fast forward a few years, just a couple of months ago, the same kid's in our home. So she had went to another home close by, and she said that family was doing respite, so they were watching her for just a little bit. And she said, "You remind me of one of my foster moms." And she's like, "Oh, who's that?" She's like, "Trina." "Oh, well, I know where they live." And she's like, "Oh," and so she set up and came by the house, and my wife's like, so and so's coming by here in a little bit. And I was like, okay. So I'm like,
Yeah.
because I feel bad, because here's this kid, she's older now, but I'm like, just that trauma that we caused, even though we couldn't help it. But that's still a trauma because they're going through that experience. And I'm like, I don't know. What are we going to say? It's just kind of a weird situation. So she came to the house and remember the dogs and of course our oldest biological son was pretty young then. And so went through all these things and, talking to her. She's doing pretty well, doing good in school, like playing sports, taller than me. And so they were leaving, and I said, "Hey, hold on just a sec." So I was like, "I've got something for you." Because when that whole situation happened, I had I think Trina may have bought it, but we had a bracelet we were going to give to her. It was just a little leather bracelet, had a little cross or something on it. And it had literally been sitting by my nightstand for 5-6 years, however long it's been. And I said, "Hold on a minute." And it still had the tag on it. I was like, "Hey, this is yours. When you left our home, this was supposed to be yours. I want you to have it now." And of course, I was glad I was able to give it to her. And of course, a few days later, Trina says that she had told that foster mom that she wasn't sure how we were going to receive her, I guess, when she came in the home. And she said that she was glad that she was able to see us and kind of it's almost like making amends in a sense because of the situation, but just that closure, I guess you could say.
She matured to understand too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she's older and she understood. And there's a lot that's happened, but she was able to be mature enough to know why it happened.
Give me an idea when you bring in any kid of any age. Well, I guess an age where they can talk, right? And you can, I would say maybe 6 and above, but 5 or 6 and above. You sit them down and you establish some rules for the house. Some rules related to your biological children, maybe the other foster kids. Like, give me an idea what that first night looks like, and then maybe some of those first few days until things hopefully they normalize a little bit, but just so they get what are the rules of the road?
Yeah. We kind of make them up as we go. It's just, everything's different, but we do have our rules. So we used to have a tradition until the place closed, but when we would get a new placement, you haven't been here long, but Stevie B's used to be Walmart in Madison on 72. It was a pizza place, and kind of had a few games in the back and stuff, and it's kind of like a CC's Pizza. So we had this tradition where anytime we get a new placement, hey, everybody likes pizza, so we go out for pizza. They got the games, and so they would do all of this and kind of be more comfortable, I guess, coming into the home. And then that's when, we would show them their room, and here's where they're staying, here's where this is, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, all these things. And then we would just go through and say, okay, well, here's the rules. I mean, we don't have too many, because that kid's going through so much in that first amount of time or whatever. So we try to lessen the stress, I guess, but we still have, hey, here's these rules, or here's what we do, and here's how we do it. But usually it's over time, kind of letting them know, here's what we expect, whether it's, structure, electronics, whatever it may be. It's kind of as we go along, I guess you could say. But funny story on the pizza thing. So we had that tradition so set in stone that anytime we would go just to go for pizza, the other kids would say, "Are we getting another kid tonight?" I'm like, no, we're not. We're just going for pizza
We're
tonight.
just going, yeah. So parenting style.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your kids are at various ages. It's 8,
I can't remember.
8, 6, and 1. Your biological kids, right? 8, 6, and 1.
I have to think about it. You got me. No, so
Levi is the middle child, right?
Yep. So Hayden just turned 8. Levi will be 4 in April. Ashlyn will be 2 in May, and then we got a bonus kiddo too. That's 12.
Okay, that's your foster.
Sure.
That's in the house now.
Yep.
Okay, but as far as you mentioned that you just kind of take it as you go. That seems to make sense, right? Every child is different.
Yeah.
But is that difficult? Like, does your parenting style change such that you're trying to accommodate this foster, and then your own kids are now confused on, well, wait a minute, you didn't used to be such a hard ass or whatever, or so soft.
Yeah.
What's going on? We're confused.
We're a hard ass with our own kids and soft with the other kids. They don't like that sometimes. But you have to parent kids in foster care differently than your own, just based on the trauma they've had or whatever it may be. But we still pretty much stick to the same rules for everyone. I mean, we try to normalize it as much as we can, because we're not going to say, hey, because it's like the foster child will say, well, it's because I'm a foster kid, they're letting me do this or do that. We try to make it fair for everyone. But when it comes to like discipline or taking things away or whatever, we try to be mindful to that child's past and their situation, I guess you could say. But as far as parenting styles, I mean, we're not as hard and rigid as some out there, and probably definitely not as flexible as some either. But we're I like to say we're an even-keeled, kind of middle of the road when it comes to rules. But that's one thing, especially with our very first foster kids, where that every child needs that, security. So that they need to know they're secure, but that stability and structure. I guess I used 3 S's. I just realized that alliteration, but that stability is huge, and having structure, because they're just kind of off to fend for themselves in a sense in a lot of situations when they're in that bad environment they're pulled from. So we try to keep it structured, whether it's bedtime at a certain time, or hey, only this much time on electronics, or whatever it may be. Yes, sir, or no, sir. I mean, just to have respect and just things that our parents taught us growing up. And we're just trying to instill that. But then also you have these, what I used to think were corny, like, this is so stupid. Why would I want to do that? And I've done it, and it worked. And I was like, this is so great. Why haven't I been doing this? So the one child I mentioned earlier that had those 2-hour meltdowns, it got to the point where me and Trina, we were both just at wit's end. We're like, we're trying our best to keep this kid here, do what we can without disrupting again. And finally, I think Trina was gone that night, and he's in his bed just screaming, crying, just hitting, just whatever. And for whatever reason, I was like, Elmo, Sesame Street, belly breathing. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a singer. But anyway, it's a song, belly breathing. So I was like, all right. I was like, hey, belly breathe with me, like in, out. And I just start doing this. And after this meltdown for an hour, or however long it was, maybe a few minutes after me saying that, he just locks eyes with me and starts breathing in, breathing out, and calm down. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever.
That's awesome.
And so a lot of things is like, this is so what? Because I mean, a lot of these children don't need probably the hard and fast, I guess you could say, from the old school parenting. It's like this new school parenting that's like, oh, you're so soft. But no, I mean, there's a reason behind a lot of it. And it has to do with that history of that child, what that child's going through, whether it's sensory or trauma or whatever. There's a parenting style for everything, I guess. And fortunately, that's helped us through some times.
So then you're assessing, you had mentioned that they're going to be going through counseling, therapy, and then you're kind of assessing how often, how frequent that child needs it and to what level.
Well, we don't necessarily. So with DHR, they have what they call an ISP, which is an individualized service plan. So that's where birth parents, foster parents, lawyers, DHR, everybody's in a room together and say, hey, what are we going to do for parent? What are we going to do for child? And basically creating a plan of action to like, hey, here's the bullet points. When we meet again in a few months, we need to see some progress on these bullet points. Or here's the things this child needs to be successful and be cared for while they're with this family. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to provide. So it may be, hey, we need counseling services. So then they will, they'll set it up. It's Medicaid or whatever. Sometimes it's us having to set up the appointments ourselves, but we'll take them to a professional and they'll dictate what that child needs. You mentioned Wellstone earlier. We've had kids that's went there. I forget the name. Used to be called something else before Wellstone, but we've had kids that's went there for counseling before. We've had some that's had like private practice elsewhere, not in a kind of a location like Wellstone. We've had some actually the teens we had virtual. Of course, they came to us when COVID first hit, so that was virtual counseling. But it just depends on the child. I mean, the medical professionals tell us what they need. We just tell DHR this is what they need, and DHR helps provide that for that child.
Yeah. Have you had some of those victories, if you will, or I think we talked a little bit earlier about the progress that sometimes is made, right? Where you've made some progress, or you're not sometimes sure if you've made a difference, but have this. I would imagine that children, whether they ever disclose it or not, or at some point they're going to disclose abuse or whatever the extreme circumstance was, right? That they might be bottling up and hiding and not sharing. Have you had some of those moments where they've opened up to you and Trina, and that's been like, that moment where like, man, I'm so glad that we provided an environment in which they were willing to do that, and that set off that opened the floodgates of help, if you will, right?
Yeah.
To say, okay, now we know what to do for this child. Has that happened?
Yeah, that's happened before. A lot of time. I mean, I think I can recall one or two kids that we had that either through an action on their part or them telling us, we found, hey, all right, this child needs help. But we've had just not in the medical sense of help, but just we've had kids as young as I think he was 3 or 4 that. Well, I can remember going actually to a doctor's appointment. He's in the back seat, and he just starts. He had a voice or speech impediment or something where he didn't speak as clearly as most his age, but still he was saying something about like mommy under the bed or something. I was like, what? And basically, I guess I don't know if the mom got hurt or what, but he had seen this, and he's in his mind for whatever reason is just coming out, and it's like, mommy, under the bed or whatever. And it's just like, wow. And then his older sibling told us a story of, I hate saying it, drug use in the bathroom. She knew because she was the parent. She was the oldest of the 3 siblings, and she essentially was the parent and still was when she was with us. And we were trying to say, hey, be a kid.
Wow.
But she told us a story of, drug use or whatever, or the dad or someone in the house came by and the gun comes out of their pocket and gun hits her too. And it's just like, what child should be, there's no child that should be in that environment or have that situation. But we've had lots of stories like that. Some, we never will hear anything. It's just what it is. But we pretty much every child's opened up, and we've always made it a point, hey, no matter how long you're here, you're part of the family now. Like you're in the bishop brood. So any time in the future, if you need something, you reach out.
Yeah.
And so we've had kids that 2 or 3 years later, I'll get a text, and it's like, hey, sorry for all the stuff we put you and Trina through back in the day, but thank you for everything you did, and we love you, and just know that we appreciate it. And I'm like,
that has to be awesome.
It's like, y'all are the best kids, but thank you. Where I'm not telling him that, but it's we appreciate it. And then. It's just little things, if I can remember one time we're going crazy with the kids and just like, man, are we doing this right? And and issues at school or home or whatever it may be, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, hey Brandon, guess what? Like what? I love you. I was like, all right, I'll keep you a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So it's a good feeling when you hear something like that.
Don't drift too far away.
Oh, yep. There we go.
So, do you all are you encouraged, or have you found that you need to do your own sessions, counseling, for you and Trina, or maybe even your kids at times to get through? You sometimes are exposed to some heavy emotion, right? Maybe more often than not. Is that something where you seek out something just to kind of talk and to open up to someone, or say, hey, I'm not really sure if I'm doing this right?
Yeah. I thought you were a counselor. That's why I'm here, right?
It's part of it, right?
No, it's we have before. Luckily, we have in our village, others we can go to and talk to, and they understand because they're in the same situation. But whether it's through support groups, I mentioned earlier when I came in, Trina's at a group tonight while I'm here. And then MCFAPA, we have our group tomorrow night, and there's other groups around town that meet as well. And then we've got, groups online to, help, just
Makes sense.
spitball and, whatever. But, one child we had, the one I mentioned, we had to disrupt. We actually did a couple of group sessions with her because her counselor suggested, because we were just having all these issues and we're like, what do we need to do? And a lot of it was towards me, honestly, because, it was the male figure, I guess, because of what had happened in her past. She just associated and she knew how to push my buttons, and you hear all these great stories of parenting, like, oh, well, if they do this, you do this. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. And then you're in the moment and you're like, what are we doing? But no, it's, we haven't had to go yet, I guess if I could say, but
Okay.
Luckily we have, we have a good group that we can, bounce things off of and talk through things.
What about just making sure that you and Trina get some date time, some time alone, some time away to, just to be away? Is that something where support group can take, kind of babysit and drop them off just to make sure that you have that time together?
Yeah. I was going to drop them off here later on since I know where you're at now, but, yeah, so the MCFAPA meetings, we're fortunate to have a partnership with the Rock Family Worship Center, but they brought us in. Actually, our first meeting there was a week before COVID shut the world down. And we had one meeting and then went virtual. So it was like, we had this great plan and then went virtual. But we're fortunate that they have childcare workers they provide. We kind of piggyback off a few other activities that happen that night each month. And so they help with childcare for free. And then dinner as well. So they provide our family dinner that's registered to attend the meeting.
Cool.
And so we get that little bit of respite. And I always jokingly tell people, hey, I think last month we had just a traditional support group rather than a speaker. And I told them, I was like, hey, we can sit here for 2 hours and just chill if you want to, or we can actually talk about things because, they've got our kids and we got a little break. So we, Trina and I, we do try to get out. We used to do more so, and hopefully we can get back to it now, but we used to go every Monday because of the way all the stars and schedules aligned. We were able to do Monday night, date night, for a few hours. We just go out by ourselves and grab something. But we try to. I want to get back to it. So I'm going to say that you said that we need to.
Yeah.
But no, we do have those moments. There are churches and other organizations that will do like a foster parent night out. So you go and drop the kids off. They take care of them. They feed them. They do activities, and you go out and do whatever. There's some that's happened like right before Christmas where, hey, go out and get your Christmas shopping done, and maybe you go home and take a nap. Maybe you actually go Christmas shopping. Whatever you want to do, you got those 2 hours or 3 hours and get a little respite.
I don't want to sound like a Commander Obvious or Captain Obvious, right? Where it's like, hey, let me give you some advice, Brandon. Like, okay, yes, there's a million people who have told me that Trina and I need to make sure that we set aside some time for ourselves. Thank you, Troy, for reminding me.
For sure. It's I need more. So I'm going to go hunt out those people and say, hey, I was told that you were going to provide childcare for a few hours.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too, is I guess the way Trina and I are wired is we're so used to helping others that we don't necessarily accept help or receive help the same way we give it, I guess. Because I mean, we've had numerous people like, hey, if you want us to watch the kids, let us know. I'll babysit for you and stuff. And it's just like, I mean, we just don't think about it because we're on to the next thing or the next activity or whatever. And maybe we need to step back and say, okay, well, I'm going to take you up on that offer. Whether they meant it or not, we're going to have to say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm cashing in.
This might be a good time to talk about the song you wrote.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm going to go ahead and play it. We're going to watch this clip of the lady playing the guitar,
Christina,
playing your song that you wrote. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at the screen.
Them how they do it. How can you be a foster parent? And Brandon said he tells people all the time, one of the things that people come to him and say is, how do you do it? Because you get so attached, and I don't think I could do it because I would get so attached to the kids. And Brandon said that he has started saying, if you get attached, that means you would be a great foster parent. That means you're doing it right. The song is called You're Doing It Wrong. If you don't take them to church on Sunday, at least teach them this little light of mine. If you don't read them a bedtime story, the one you've read at least 1,000 times. If you don't hold their tiny hand, stand and be brave, although you're just as scared, you're doing it wrong. If you don't cry, if you don't pray, if you don't worry, you haven't done enough at the end of the day. If you don't laugh, if you don't love, if you don't hug them while they're yours and miss them when they're gone, you're doing it wrong. If you don't ask them if they've got homework over and over again throughout the night, if you don't expect them to clean their room and help around the house as they roll their eyes, if you don't teach them to wish on a shooting star or give a hug and a kiss as they get out of the car, you're doing it wrong. If you don't cry, if you don't pray, if you don't worry, you haven't done enough at the end of the day. If you don't laugh, if you don't love, if you don't hug them while they're yours and miss them when they're gone, you're doing it wrong. Take them camping and let them tell you who they are. Live vicariously and simply plant a loving seed. you don't pray, if you don't worry, you haven't done enough at the end of the day. If you don't laugh, if you don't love, if you don't hug them while they're yours and miss them when they're gone, you're doing it wrong. If you don't wonder if you're doing it wrong. And when the time comes to say goodbye, they'll be brave, and you'll be strong, strong.
I noticed right away that she grabbed the big guitar at the beginning of the clip. She was playing something and she kind of switches guitars, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like thing's big.
Yeah,
I don't know enough about guitarists as to what sound she was going for.
I don't know either, but I know it was a singer-songwriter fundraiser, so they had it may have been one each night, whenever it was. So she played numerous songs. So it probably just depends, because it was live at the time, and probably whatever's tuned up and ready to go. And I have no idea when it comes to guitars, but I'd love to play it one day.
So here's the lyrics on the screen. Depending on how this does end up coming out for the folks, if we use the audio or not. So what was let's talk about this. The inspiration for the song, and then did you struggle at all to put together all the verses? Did it just come? Not everybody gets to write a song.
Yeah. So kind of the backstory on this. Christina, the one that was performing, she and I met actually at was it WHNT? We both did the noon show. I was there for Big Brothers Big Sisters at the time for a fundraiser we had coming up, and she was there for Madison Arts Council for a fundraiser they had coming up. And I've always had this affinity for singer-songwriters, music. I mean, that's my therapy. And so she and I were sitting in the lobby, and we found out she was a songwriter, and we just we're just talking like we're best friends. She's the sweetest soul you'll ever meet. Just so sweet, beautiful. And so Carrie Marchese at the time, which is funny, she's at Kids to Love now, but Carrie used to be the noon anchor. And so she comes out to get us, and she's like, "Are you guys friends? You know each other?" Like, we just met 20 minutes ago. So from that meeting, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come check out your event," and then she came and checked out my event. Just support each other, and we became great friends from then on out. And so we've always supported each other in some way or fashion. And actually had texted her yesterday, and songwriter. So okay, we go through all these things. Fast forward a few years later, a friend of mine here in town, Sandy Patel, I'd met him at a mutual friend's wedding. Hadn't talked in a little bit, and he's like, "Hey, Dale," which is a guy here in town. You're familiar with Stevenson down the road, probably.
Yeah.
So Dale McGee used to do a singer-songwriters for St. Jude event, and it went on for years. Him and a guy started 20 years ago. Sandy's like, "Hey, Dale's going to put this thing down," because we had been to this event because Christina played at it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Man, I'll help you out." So of course he and I both put on the singer-songwriter fundraiser a few years, and so one of those years we were doing the fundraiser, we had like a little silent auction tie-in to help raise, and all this money goes straight back to St. Jude. And so Will Stoltz is a songwriter from the Shoals, and he's like, "Hey, I'll throw in a songwriting session." And I already had in my mind, I'm donating this much money to St. Jude regardless. How am I going to donate it, whether it's through silent auction or what? And so I'd had this idea forever to write a song, and I told Christina, I want to write a song one day. And so to push me forward, I was like, I'm going to bid this thing up on the silent auction. So I bid it up and beat someone else out for a songwriting session. He probably could he would have done it for free, but I did it through the auction. So my in-laws at the time lived in Athens. He worked in Athens, And so we met at my in-laws' house because it was kind of a central point because I think he's in Russellville or not Rogersville, Russellville, I think. So kind of a centralized point. We get there to write this song initially. So Will and I started out initially. And we get there and we're sitting down like you and I are right now. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to write this song. He's like, well, wait a minute. He's like, let's talk about what you and Trina are doing with foster care. And I was like, okay. Because I told him I wanted to do something related to, but wasn't quite sure what direction I wanted to go. Had all these ideas on my phone. And he's like, tell me about it. So I was like, yeah, blah, 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 whatever I told him at the time. And he's like, well, me and my wife are thinking about doing it. And I was like, oh, you should. And this, that, and the other, and giving him all the reasons why he should. And he's like, man, I just don't think I could do it. I get too attached. And I'm like, well, that's the thing. If you don't get attached, you're doing it wrong. And he's like, there's your song.
There's your song.
I was like, well, that's not what I wanted to write. So that's what we're writing today.
He's Rick Rubin.
Yeah. So that was my song. So we started, and I've got the lyrics pulled up here, just kind of walk through it. But
here you go.
And I could show you notes on here. I've still got the original notes of where I was just had all these ideas. But basically,
is that the second page, or no? The other verse goes into the second page you sent me.
Yeah, this is.
They have more of your notes. Do you want me to go to the other one?
No, that's the first one. I've got like Google Keep notes or whatever.
I gotcha.
Because we collaborated via Google Keep, all three of us. But I mean, I've got you can see this is way a lot more than than the actual lyrics. But I wanted to do something that was the inverse of what you thought it was. I always love those songs or stories where it's like you think it's one thing, but it's the complete opposite. So it's like, okay, you're doing it wrong. Like, you're going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. But in reality, hey, if you're not doing the right things, you're doing it wrong, essentially. So we start going through these different iterations and kind of, I don't know how long the session was that day, maybe an hour or so. And that was really the first in-person session. We did some on the phone, some through Google or email and stuff because he got busy with work and I was as well. And this, we went back and forth for a good year or two. And he's like, we need to bring Christina in because she can pull the heartstrings and just her voice and everything else kind of pull it together.
Wow, a year or two.
Oh, it's
lengthy.
Probably. Yeah. What was that date on that sheet is
2019.
Yeah, 2019. This was July of 18. So
okay.
Probably a good 2 years or so before it was complete. And so Christina had a lot to do with that chorus, which I think's the best ever. But basically, I wanted to walk through everyone, like, if you don't take them to church, if you're not going to do this, at least do this. If you're not going to do that, at least do that. And just, help them have that childhood that they need and, deserve. It's a kid. But just all these things you don't think about, like if you don't do this, and then with Christina with the chorus, cry, pray, worry. If you don't do these things, then you're doing it wrong. And I was like, all right, that's it. I think we finished it up, and it's changed a little bit since these lyrics. I couldn't find the electronic version. I've got this, but I didn't want to send you all that stuff. But yeah, it's changed a good bit with the ending at least. But yeah, we basically just wanted to have that flip. And I think one of those articles I wrote for a blog here in town, it's like, you shouldn't be a foster parent. It's like, here's why. But no, it's
that's like reverse psychology in a way, right? Is what you were going after for that.
Oh yeah. I love stuff like that. So, and then that kind of tied in with the Get Attached shirts we had made for MCFAPA. And cause we hear it all the time. It's like, oh, I get too attached. I'm like, you'd be the perfect parent.
Yeah.
Because they need attachment. They need love.
It's interesting. I try to go running as often as I can. And actually, let me before I mention that, do you and Trina have, so I had talked to you or asked you about, do you go on dates? Do you spend enough time together? But do you also just personally have to, do things to vent, whether that's exercise or just solitary or yoga, or like, is there something you personally need to do?
There's lots of things I need to do that I haven't done yet.
Okay.
I used to run a lot up until Ashlyn was born, and then sleep was more important because I got in a good rhythm of getting up at like 5 a.m. and going.
Really?
and then I got out of it, and it's hard to get back in it. But no, I mean, it's the kids take so much between soccer and this and that and all these activities that's every once in a while we'll slip away and scream in a pillow in a closet or something. But that's, I mean, we still have our events, whether it's through those same support mechanisms or groups where we're talking to them. MCFAPA, we used to have before COVID, we had a crossroads group, which is kind of, you have the MCFAPA training meetings that's topical and have speakers and you're on one track, and then you've got the crossroads meeting, which was I lovingly called our venting session. So, hey, come with your problems, whatever it is, throw it on the table and we'll figure it out. So yeah, I mean, outside of that, I'd love to hit a boxing bag or something.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
just finding the time to get it.
So I'm always surprised that every day I wake up and I'm like, there's no way I'm running today. And then I'll always find, well, I don't always find the time, but I'll have this urge like around 3 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. Like, hey, when you get home from work, you should go on a run before it gets dark. But anyway, you had just sent me, I think I had stumbled, you had sent me, I send every guest a request to answer basic questions, right? And then I'll figure out how I want to incorporate those answers into the episode. And in that, you had put that link. It was one thing, and then links to websites and just helpful reference for me. And it's been a number of weeks since I first met you, so normally I'll look at stuff, and then I'll get busy preparing for other guests that are more near term, and then at some point I'll get around to okay, I've got to hyper focus now right on this episode so that it comes across the way I want it to come across. And I had just stumbled upon that song, and then I had asked you for the lyrics, and then I went running, and there's a country song by Old Dominion, kind of like them, and they have
It's
this
not country.
That's true, the new country, right? Yeah, you're right. But they have this song that's like, you have to love like there's no such thing as a broken heart, and I was like, oh my gosh, that resonated with what you had just sent me, where it's like, it's about what's best for the child, right? It's not about you, and don't worry about attaching. Put your whole self and your whole soul and everything you can give into that child, so that you are setting them up for success in life. And okay, you can't worry about having that broken heart, or you can't worry about it, or otherwise you're doing it wrong. Right? You're just doing it wrong.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I guess foster parents love knowing they're going to have a broken heart because, I mean, it's just, it's inevitable at some point, whether, because that's your child for whatever length of time they're with you. And then whether you still have that relationship or not, you've still got that brokenness, I guess, or that trauma in a sense, grieving, I guess you could call it.
Right.
That we go through. but that's, I mean, love knowing you're going to have a broken heart, but know that broken heart, that peace that's coming off of that broken heart is going into their heart, hopefully, and just it's going to stick with them for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
There's purpose through the pain, I always have heard. And, it's, and it's texts like I mentioned earlier that you get 2 or 3 years later after you've had the kids, and they're like, hey, thanks, love you. And, and that tells me, okay, well, that piece of my broken heart that they picked it up and kept it, and they still have it a few years later.
Yeah. Did you I know you like R&B, Americana, or some of the different genres of music you like,
everything.
When it came to music producers though, do you have a particular producer that on the production side that you gravitate to, or are inspired by in any way?
Not necessarily. It's funny because over the years with all these kids and everything we've done, it's like my brain is just, what's going on up here? But I gravitate towards the lyrics and the melody or beat. I mean, I was a percussionist back in high school, and I'm always tapping or doing something. Trina hates it because usually it's her shoulder. But if it's got a good beat, I may listen to it strictly for the beat. I don't care about the lyrics, which is most, rap or whatever these days.
Right.
But no, I love songs that make me cry.
Okay.
So anything that's going to pull and tug at your heart and like, man, he went through something, or just their delivery of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I gravitated so much towards Christina when I first met her, is because, you know, she's a songwriter. It's her songs. It's her history, her stories, whether they're true or made up, you know, but it's her telling them. And it's like, that's the thing. Like, okay, I love the story. And just whatever lyrics. I mean, William Fitzsimmons is one. I think it's William Fitzsimmons. I ran across years ago. I think he makes nothing but sad songs. And it's like, every once in a while, I just get in that mood. I'm like, I gotta listen to this.
Yeah.
But you know, Chris Stapleton. I mean, his voice, his lyrics, and that's the thing. I mean, oh man, this country singer Blake Shelton's a great songwriter. It's like he didn't write anything.
The song.
Yeah, like,
Right.
I mean, you know, it just depends. The old Blake Shelton might have been good, but new Blake, you know, it's all crap country.
Yeah, you're right.
And I say that, and I've got a friend from college that just made it CMT here recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, what's country to you, Michael Warren. Check him out. He's pretty good. But you know, it's still, I mean, it's pop country. But you know, I like the old country, the outlaws, the stuff that meant something.
Yeah. I'm just always amazed at the number of great songwriters, the great songs that are out there that will never make it, right? And you're like, I don't know. I'll sit there and try to be like critical. Okay, what is it about this song, even if it's a top artist, that for some reason that track, that single, whatever, never became popular?
Yeah, it's
and you'll sit there and think, how was that? Like, what was it? What was missing?
Yeah, the commercial ability of it, I guess. Yeah. What's going to sell quickest and fastest, basically, I feel like. But I'm not in the music business, so I have no idea. But.
You know, it's interesting. You were talking about like emotion. Like I used to travel internationally. It's been several years, but it would seem like every time I got on an airplane, it really didn't matter what song I was listening to or what movie I watched. It was like emotional. Yeah. And I think it's because I was going over the ocean. And I was like, okay, if this plane goes down, I'm dead. Like even if it was over land, you're probably not going to survive. But I always felt like maybe there was a chance if you know, somehow we like glide land or something on the prairies of Nebraska. But you know, in the ocean, you're pretty much that's it. You're done.
Yeah. You say that, and I think I was on a plane a couple of weeks ago and I was listening to Slipknot. So it's total opposite of R&B. So.
But it's funny because I would come back and I'd be so moved by like I was like gosh, I can't remember the name of the artist, and I would be like, hey, you like that song? And they're like, no, not really. Like I do. And I kind of realized, oh well, there's a lot of emotion mixed in because I was like gonna miss my family and. I'm going to England or something, and I may not come back, you know, like, or this movie, like, you see this movie, oh, it's so good. And like, no, like, people would say, no, I don't, I'm not following you, Troy.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's just me.
I'd
get in this like emotional space, you know, on the plane.
Oh yeah. I'm just emotional in general, but it doesn't have to be a plane. But yeah, it's if it's got meaning or something, but even if the original intentions weren't to have meaning, I'm going to find meaning in it. And it's like, oh, and I read into things probably more so than I should sometimes. But no, it's the lyrics is where it's at for me when it comes to music.
Let's transition. I want to go through what I call a picture pack.
Yeah.
I had asked you to send me some pictures, and
sent you a bunch.
You did, and I've queued up most of them, and this is just going to be a fun part where we cruise through and. We'll hopefully get we'll get to see Trina. We'll get to see the stuff you gave your kids, whatever. You can just talk us through it. And there's a silly side of you, I think, right? And the fun side of Brandon. By the way, other than John Kovach, you got a killer beard.
Oh,
you grow a good beard. John, I don't know if you know John. He's the Singing River Trail guy, and he's a beard guy, right? Like we joked about that at the end of the episode, but you sport it well, man.
Yeah, everyone accuses me at work of Just for Men, and I'm like, I haven't. There's so many grays in here. I've not done it.
All right, here's the first one, and I remember I'm only been here a year, and I think this was like in the summertime. Was this last year? So talk us through this picture. For those listening, you're gonna have to check this out on the video side, but we're starting to cruise through. pictures, and here's a picture of Brandon rappelling downtown Huntsville. So talk through this.
Yeah, so I think this was the first year of Over the Edge. So Kids to Love, that's a foster adoptive nonprofit here in town. That's their big fundraiser each year is Over the Edge, and so I think that was the first year because no, the color is off a little bit. So that's the sharks. That was last year. So baby shark costume. My first costume, and I think I sent you pictures for it, is it was Kermit the Frog, I believe. So I got to do it different. I can't just go out there and nobody know I was there. So
yeah, that's supposed to be like a light blue. I think sometimes my capture card, I call it jaundice. It kind of jaundices the screen and it gives you like a yellow tint.
Yeah. That's why I thought it was green at first, but yeah.
So that's their big fundraiser.
Yep. So that was last year. That was my third year doing it. So they invite me each year to come, and I still raise money because it's a great cause. But yeah, so and actually Trina, this was her first year that she went over the edge as well. So
and right now you're basically just beginning your descent.
Yep. So it's on the Regions Bank building downtown Huntsville. So when you go over, they do pictures all the way down, but basically you get on the edge and you jump back and yeah, you go down a few feet and you put your arms out and they grab a picture and then you rappel down.
Okay. All right, let's see what we have next. Let's see if I can advance this. Here we go. This is Trina.
There's Trina. Yep. So that was her first time last year. And I forget which songs we picked. I think she wanted me to pick hers, and it was something that probably wasn't what she wanted.
So she has like a radio attached to her too?
Yeah. So we both, anyone that goes down does. So last year was the first year they had 3 lines going down. So you had me, someone in the middle, and then her. I guess they split us up. I think that's how it was. But usually there's 2 lines. But, you have to go through a safety check and all these things because it's a, 12-story building or something you're going over. So you go through 3 different checkpoints, and of course that's the radio. They're going to radio if you're stuck or something and
communicate with you.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're saying music was playing too, or?
Yeah. So it's a fundraiser, like I said. So they always have this party where you have certain times you're going over the edge. So if I say, hey Troy, come check me out Saturday at 2:00. I'm going over the edge. So you can go down. They have food trucks and a DJ and all this stuff, and they want you to pick a song to play. And, And I think I had one that had meaning behind the lyrics, but they probably couldn't find that song, or the DJ couldn't find it. So I forget which one I had played, but may have been Rod Stewart or something. But yeah, so that's
cool.
Yeah, that was her first one.
Okay, so now here's your family. You're done.
Yep. So that was the afterwards photo. So there's Ashlyn on the left, of course Trina, Levi there in the middle, myself, and then Hayden that can never take a good picture.
They're both shy?
No, Hayden just makes faces or whatever. And here lately, Levi started throwing gang signs or something when he's taking pictures. But yeah, that's them. They're definitely my kids.
I tell you, it brings back memories. I have 1 daughter, 3 boys, and just looking at her shoes, wearing her Crocs, and like just that outfit, it's bringing me flashbacks and memory lane with my own daughter.
Yeah, those are the best shoes for kids.
Yeah, and that's This is the different year, Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, so that was my first year going over the edge. So yeah, I may own a few onesies for things I do.
Where'd you find that?
I don't know, Walmart
Amazon?
or something.
Oh, really?
I think that was a year that was pre-kids, and we had in the attic, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go out. I don't have a costume for Halloween, so I went to Walmart or somewhere and picked up a Kermit the Frog onesie and a beanie and shoes or something. But I pulled that one back from the archives and broke it out for my first Over the Edge.
Okay. Now here's a thing that you do with the Grinch, right? Santa Land.
Yeah. So I actually just got back from St. Louis from a convention this weekend for Christmas and Halloween. But that I blame all of this on Trina. Just years ago, I think this will be my 7th year doing it. Santa Land that's in Rogersville, Alabama. It's probably 55 minutes from here. But she had seen on Facebook that they were looking for a new character actor for the Grinch, that the guy couldn't do it or something. And, oh, you'd be great. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So I went out and met with a guy, and I mean, and this is his costume. He produces these. So this is the Grouch, not the Grinch.
Okay.
But we still call it the Grinch. But so went out and got this gig and during the holidays, and so basically my holidays have been shot for the last 6-7 years. Because I usually go Friday and Saturday nights. I'm out there. Sometimes Sundays. We'll do a Grinchmas on Thursday sometimes. But
For like a month or so.
yeah, it goes the weekend before Thanksgiving through Christmas.
Wow.
One year we got rained out because it's an indoor-outdoor event, and we got rained out pretty bad one season. So we actually did a Grinchmas for the first time where I took over Santa's chair after Christmas. And we probably had as many, if not more, people than a busy night during before Christmas. So that was, of course, that was a Christmas party that MCFAPA did at Stars and Strikes in Huntsville, and so we had Santa come. So I had to have the Grinch come. So of course I dressed up and interacted with the kiddos there.
So it's really just kind of walking around, taking pictures with kids, character actor that way, right? And
Yeah. So the
any other like requirements?
Not really. It's I mean the mask, you can't really tell too much from that, but that's a full. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Full face silicone. So it's the whole thing. It's like, I mean, you gotta stretch it out to get in there. It's
hot?
crazy. It's hot. Yeah. It's probably 25 pounds.
Jeez.
But it's got the mask, and it's got like the half chest flap with the fur and everything.
You dropping some water weight?
Oh yeah, and it's funny because when I've lost like 40 pounds since the first year I did it.
Really?
And like the picture from the conventions the other day. So the Santa Land, they also do commercial grade Christmas decorations, and he helps put on the convention and stuff. So I've went the last 2 years, and there was a couple of pictures I showed Trina the other day. I was like, I gotta get a new belly thing because it's kind of boxy because I'm just kind of a anorexic looking Grinch now. But but yeah, so it's consumed my life for years now. Everybody knows me as the Grinch, and it's like, hey. And then actually this past year, I went outside of just doing things like this for people I know or for our own. And actually put it on the Facebook page for Madison, and I think I had 12 or 13 gigs the week of Christmas of doing visits and drive-bys and stuff as the Grinch. It was fun, but I don't know that I would do it again like I did it this last year.
We love our characters and costume, right? Our mascots and things.
Yeah.
It's just we go crazy.
And it's crazy because there's some kids I've grown up with them at Santa Land. Like he comes back. There's one kid in particular. His grandpa brings him every year, and he comes up, and it's just like we're best buds. He comes
That's
up,
cool.
to, pound out with the Grinch, and like, how you doing? And walks around with me, and it's really cool. But Santa Land, all of the profits from there, he actually uses to put on Christmas for kids in need. Primarily in Northwest Alabama. Where Rogersville and the Shoals, but yeah, everything's done given back to the community, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Okay, and all right, so here is what's this picture?
Yeah, so I kind of threw a bunch of random pictures at you to talk through. So this is one of the MCFAPA meetings. This is just, foster and adoptive parents in our natural habitat, I guess you could say.
So these are all active foster.
Well, this is an older picture.
Well, at the time they were all active.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So foster, adoptive, kinship families, primarily foster with this one. I think this was a prudent parenting class that all foster families have to take at some point. But that was one of our bigger meetings, I guess. But yeah,
Okay.
That's where they come in, and like I said, the Rock feeds us and childcare and get a couple hours of training, and yeah, it's good times.
That's awesome. And here's like a clothing drive.
Yeah, so this is our house. I should have sent you actually the pictures from the other day, but I jokingly tell people we don't have to worry about like furniture and things to fill out our house because it's usually donations and Rubbermaid totes. Because I mean we're all volunteer ran, and my wife is a huge helper with the den at DHR, and we have storage unit here in Madison. We have one in Huntsville, and it's strategically located to restock and do different seasons. And she's constantly working. She was there yesterday, I think, at the storage unit reorganizing things. But But this is our home most days. So this is, someone in the community reached out and said, hey, we want to help support, foster kids, do a drive, whatever. So we always try to recognize those in the community that's helping the cause. And this was from one drive.
Yeah.
And
so here you're kind of doing an initial sort, triage, and then you figure out what storage unit, which bins to put them in, and just fill out the den.
Yeah, we've got probably 90 plus bins that are labeled that we go through.
Boy, girl, age, that kind of stuff.
Yep. So the way it works at the den is you've got gender, age, size, and we've got them in Ziploc bags. They're all new clothing. They're all labeled to where the worker can go in. Because it's the social worker, we're at the mercy of using it. But they go in, grab a new duffel bag, get a bag of new clothing, a bag of shoes, or not a bag of shoes, but a pair of shoes, socks, underwear, toiletries, hair care, whatever it is to get them through their first few days. And then one of our other partners can help assist with up to a few weeks worth of clothes. But we also have, it's called the MCFAPA Exchange, and it's solely for foster, adoptive, kinship families that are active. And we have partnerships with Once Upon a Child, Plato's Closet, and some others in town to where anything they can't sell or if they clearanced it out, and they'll donate to. We literally have like a team of 8 sorters that are going every day, literally every day, picking up a carload of stuff, taking it to their home, sorting through it, seeing what we can use at the den, which usually isn't a whole lot because we try to keep it new. And then what we can use for our families, we'll put on that exchange page, and it's just like a buy nothing page. Like they don't have to pay for it.
Right.
And then whatever we can't use, we either donate to some like Christmas charities year round, or we'll donate it to like a recycling program to get rid of it.
It's a big effort.
It is.
Here you are.
So this was at the event center where we have our Bros, Bows, and Booze Fall Festival. So we're doing it again this fall, but this will be our 5th year, but this was last year's picture. And one of our board members made the Boo Crew shirts for us, and mine was not my size, so that's why I'm not in it.
You're wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, we're wearing the same Get Attached shirt. That's my favorite. But yeah, so this was us, I think maybe after the aftermath, but we had about 500 or 600 people that came through. It's a free event we have it's 90% foster adoptive kinship, but it's just a way to kind of let them have some fun, free fun for their kids, feed them, and let them know they're supported.
Yeah.
That's Christina. So this past year, we'd never done live music, and of course this was we'd finished the song, and she and I had been talking some, and I was like, hey, do you want to come and perform? And it's always just been her, but she's got her team. Russ and Kelsey that came with her. So they put the dobro and everything, music to the song as well. But she performed her other songs that they all performed together. But it was really cool. It did not work out how I wanted it to because it was so loud. And the audio was great, but yeah, it was just loud with all the kids going on. But
yeah,
it was fun.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so that was actually the Christmas and Halloween show came from this past weekend. That was last year. So Trina and I, that was our first time going. You see Santa Lynn up in the top left there, but yeah, he's a big sponsor and contributor to putting this show on, and it's ridiculous. I never thought in my life I would be in a place like that, but you go one side and it's Christmas decorations that cost as much as a car or two, and then the other side you've got people walking around with severed limbs and dead bodies, and it's all these things for haunted houses or attractions.
Yeah.
So Trina did not care about going back this year. She said, no, one's enough for me. So
that's awesome. And here's your storage unit.
Yeah, that's one of the units when it's nice and pretty. So I think this may have been just our effort, but we've had other community partners that's come, whether it's school groups or something, that come and help us sort when we can. We have people reach out a lot saying, hey, how do you have something we can do for a service project? But we don't operate traditionally like some that have a location, have a staff or whatever, and say, yeah, you can come and we're doing this every day. The organizing happens every few months, and switch out of the seasons twice a year. But yeah, that's one of the units, and that's most of the bins.
And here's is
Yep.
that Hayden?
Yep. So that's him. Where was this? This was James Clemens. So they did a night where they had us there for their theater production, I believe. And that was the colors messing with me there. So I'm like, where is this at?
Yeah, it's supposed to be like that deep blue.
But yeah, so we set up and just had information about us. I think they did a clothing drive for the den as well. But yeah, that's kind of our setup there.
And this is family now. You're at amusement park or something?
Well, funny story. So this was our 10-year anniversary last year, so July. And of all people, got to connect with some foster family that used to live in Huntsville that now live in Honolulu.
Oh, wow.
So they're, of course, military, so he's over there for now. And, we were able to arrange it to where we did the Polynesian Cultural Center together. So we had an all-day, spend some time together. And it was kind of cool.
Yeah, North Shore of Oahu, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's your, there you are in costume.
There
is that
I
the
am.
guy that made the costume?
No, can't. So, I know you can't guess who this guy is in his older state, but have you ever watched that movie, A Christmas Story? It's
Yeah.
a little something, some people seen it.
Yeah.
So that's Flick. So that's the guy that stuck his
Oh,
tongue
that
to
really?
the light pole, or the lamp post or whatever, froze
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so Shane's friends with him. This was just a few days ago at the show. So
wow, that's cool.
So he came out last year to Santa Land, did some autographs and everything, and then this year Shane brought him into the Trans World show to do autographs. So that was me and him at his booth, and then we went out to dinner with him Saturday night with him and a guy that had won the Great Christmas Light Fight a few years ago from Texas.
Huh.
But yeah, it was cool.
Did he ever do anything else as an actor? I don't.
He did. Was it Toy? Was it Toy with Rich?
Richard Pryor, the toy.
The Toy, yeah,
Toy,
that's
yeah.
it. He did that one. Of course, they have the new Christmas story movie. I haven't watched it yet, but I think he's in it again. He did a few other movies too, but primarily I think as a child actor.
Yeah.
And he's
Iconic scene.
Yeah, he's. I mean,
how many people have tried to do that right as a stunt? Millions.
Triple Dog Dare you.
Triple Dog
I mean, it's a whole thing. But he's a cool guy.
And there's Ashlyn. Oh, there's you.
There's me and Ashlyn. So yeah, this past year, actually Levi's daycare did. They asked if the Grinch would like to do photos with the kids at the daycare. So I was like, yeah, sure. So we had Santa on one side and a partition, and they didn't know, and they kind of come over, and you get those pictures. Half the kids are screaming, and then Ashlyn. That's the funny thing about my kids is everybody knows me as the Grinch that's in our house, and it's like, Daddy, and it's like the best picture ever. Like just
she's happy.
Oh yeah. So this was at Bros and Bows. This was a few years ago. Of course, there's the shark ones that you may have seen a time or two before. But this was one of we do a costume contest throughout, and this
You're kind of emceeing the event here or judging.
Yeah, well, yeah, MC, I guess. We always push the judging off on someone else so the kids don't get mad. Somebody took this picture. It was just a cool looking picture, but that was some of the kids.
It's almost like you're rapping, kind of the way you're holding the mic.
That's why I liked it. Yeah, it's can't rap, but that's Project Sweet Peace. A friend of ours runs that nonprofit, so it's for NICU babies and families. But my sister, I have a sister that's half my age, and she was a NICU baby, so she was born 3 months premature.
Wow.
And funny story. So a foster mom years ago had said, "Hey, I had an office downtown Huntsville," and she's like, "I've got this nonprofit, a friend of mine, it's looking for a place to." She had the junior league coming in and making Halloween costumes for preemies, and she's like, "Do you know of any place?" I was like, "Well, it's just me in my office, but I got a large conference room area. Like, they can use that. I don't care." And so I let them come in. That's how I met her the first time. And I told her, I was like, "Well, actually, I've got a history. My sister was premature and spent 3 months in NICU in Huntsville and all these things." And so we got to know each other. So we've actually, Trina and I have sponsored her event the last few years. So that's our date night at least once a year.
That's coming up. Well, based on that timestamp there.
Well, it's in April this year.
Oh, they moved it to
it's
April?
Casino night this year. So yeah, we've got tickets.
Nice family picture there.
Yeah, so that was holidays this year. It's somewhat recent, but yeah, on the train tracks in downtown Madison. Levi, there he is with his gang signs or whatever he's doing there with his hands. but yeah, that turned out good.
Let's end with that one. That's a good shot. Let me switch back. All right, I want to play the quick 6 with you.
Okay.
I don't know if you've watched some of my episodes. I have 6 questions. Sometimes I have 7 or 8. I might think of an additional question as I'm asking you questions, and it's just to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Some of them are meant to be follow up from things we talked about, and some of it's just random.
Okay.
Okay. This is the one thing I actually have to look at paper. So University of Alabama. In fact, my family, my wife and 2 of my kids are in Tuscaloosa right now.
Okay.
Tip off just happened. Alabama's playing Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's family, her mother's side is from Gainesville, Florida. So they were Gators fans, and we try really hard to make them not Gators fans. So this is I haven't even been to the campus yet in Tuscaloosa. So they went down and decided to go buy tickets like $9 in some section.
Oh, yeah.
And they're watching a basketball game.
That's
So
awesome.
University of Alabama, everyone, and it's funny when like the NCAAs happen and some school that you've never heard of does well, and all of a sudden their enrollment spikes, right?
Yeah.
My undergrad was at George Mason. In 2006, they go to the Final Four. No one's ever heard of George Mason, and their enrollment spikes. What's an element of the campus, the school itself, that is underrated, that it doesn't get enough notoriety for how exceptional it is or how special it is to you? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other than football and maybe some of the other things, I don't know enough about. I didn't grow up here to know what their strong. I guess law. They have a good law program, but what's something that would surprise people, or you'd really have to have lived there and gone to school there to really appreciate that's exceptional?
Now, is this just to the campus itself or just anywhere in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, to the campus. To the university.
Man, it's been so long, and things have changed so much. Like, it was funny because we took the kids there a few months ago. I had a meeting in town, and so they went with me. I was like, yeah, let's go through the campus. Like, right over here on the left is where wait a minute, that building's not there anymore. I was like, well, over here that's a parking lot now. It's, I couldn't tell you. There's probably no secrets now that are still there. But no, it's, I don't know. I imagine they're still there, but probably my on-campus job, like, it was at the Institute for Social Science Research, and the best, worst job ever. But like, hey, if you're going to school there, go get a job there, because you cannot show up for 2 weeks and they'll give you a raise. But we were phone dialers. We would do surveys for research, and we would just randomly call numbers through our system. Like, hey, Troy, I'm with the, whatever capstone poll. We're doing a survey on smoking. Would you? And there was, hang up or whatever. But we made our own schedule, which is probably not the best thing to get you prepared for a job out of college.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, just come in between these hours. So that would probably be the best kept secret is having a job there. There's probably other places like that as well on campus, but I knew that from my experience.
Okay. All right. You mentioned you've been up to Nashville to watch the MLS team. We now have their minor league, the MLS Next here, right? The Huntsville Football Club. This is now, I'm just going to ask your opinion. How does the U.S. become competitive in the World Cup? For let's say men's. I know women, we've had some success, but like, let me just set up my question by saying, how is it not possible that we can gather together like 110-year-olds and develop them into a world-class soccer team if all they do, right, is all they do year-round is play soccer, right? Or by the time they're 5, whatever, we have this experiment where we take this group of kids. I don't get it. I don't understand in the size of this country.
Oh yeah,
and it's a ball, it's a game. I get it. Okay, yeah. Well, if you dedicate your life to it, like other countries have, why is it that we have great athletes here?
Yeah.
Why is it that we cannot compete on the world stage?
I don't know what it is, and honestly, I never was into soccer much until the kids started playing.
Right.
And so it's so funny because Hayden he played indoor soccer for a time, just could care less about it. And now Hayden, like yesterday, he's wearing a Messi jersey outfit. Today he was wearing like AYSO outfit
Really?
to school. And then I'll pick him up from the bus. Dad, do you know why so-and-so didn't win so-and-so game and so-and-so? I'm like, no, but you're going to tell me. So he's constantly watching YouTube and
Really?
getting books. And I mean, it's just crazy the stats he's learning. And I have no idea, but you would think that we could figure that piece out. I mean, I know football, like our football is, I guess, the moneymaker when it comes to sports. But
Right.
I mean, the actual football.
But most kids start out playing soccer, right? As far as
Yeah.
like organized sports, and it's just and then they depart from it at some point in this country. But
And we never had soccer growing up. Like we had,
really,
well, I mean, we may have, but I never knew of it anyway. I mean, we had baseball, softball, basketball, football, like the big ones. But compared to like Bob Jones or something here that has volleyball and golf and archery or whatever it is, like
Bowling.
we didn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never played soccer growing up and never really had an experience or was exposed to it, I guess, until probably 8 or 9 years ago. Actually, a guy that does my accounting, his firm, he used to own the Rocket City United team that was here. It's a Premier Soccer League team, or I think it's Premier League. And so I did something for him one time, and so went out to a game of his. But they played at the fields over there by John Hunt Park or whatever. And but yes, that versus seeing Nashville last year was a different experience.
you had mentioned that lately, or you've had a good penchant to be recognized at work with awards, sales goals and things like that. But so, like, what is on the work side? I know we haven't talked a lot about actually what you do, but what is it that really sets you apart? What is your talent in the workplace?
I guess one way you could say is being a floater. Another way can be being agile. We had our kickoff conference just a few weeks ago in Charleston, South Carolina, and I ended up getting it's the Big Bear Award. So my company, I've been with the ownership group, I guess, 15 years or so. Started in the shipping logistics industry. I was there rather for 13 years or so, and we started a sister company. And the Bear, we were Bear Ventures was our franchise name. And you had Bear Franchising, Bear Ventures. It's just bears everywhere. And then we started a sister company called Bear Cognition. So we do data intelligence for businesses, organizations, whatever. And so when they gave the speech or whatever a few weeks ago, they said this guy or this person, I guess, has had more titles than anyone else here. And actually, he just made up a title the other day on an email he sent out, and I'm like, that's me. But at the shipping side of the business, I was director of IT in my last position. I said I was director of whatever it was they told me to do, and I do.
There you go.
So I would say agile. Being agile is probably the biggest thing because and you have to right now because we've changed directions a few times here in the last little bit. Just having that flexibility, I guess, and not, hey, I have to do it this way, not this way, and just the creativity behind the flexibility.
Yeah, I talked about that in the last episode with Clay Coleman, Freak Daddy from the Havoc, and just being indispensable, right? Like you come in, teach your kids, like it's not just about doing the job, but find other things to do, right? So that you're you're invaluable.
Yeah,
and they can't do without you.
Oh yeah, that's a huge thing nowadays, especially in the tech world with all the layoffs and such going on. But yeah, being an asset in every sense of the word, I think is a big thing.
Give me an embarrassing moment with your wife, whether you were dating or in college or something where you completely embarrassed yourself in front of her.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Probably so many I can't say, or she would kill me if I said.
Right.
I don't even know what I want to say here. So
Yeah, you're like me. There's just too many. Like, wait a minute. I'm like, there's a million.
no, I can't think of any. I never. I mean, I'm probably embarrass her every day. She just doesn't tell me. So we may have, so pre-kids way back in the day, we may have been in Birmingham and may have imbibed a little too much in the devil's juice. I may have, and I can just we went to a friend's house and I just remember, just pulling the sheets together and just creating a vessel. And that's all I'm gonna say.
You may have been at the friend's house. And you may have allegedly pulled the sheets together.
And actually, now that I say that story, probably the most embarrassing was our wedding night because I may have gotten a little enamored with myself. They
Oh wow.
yeah, they didn't turn out the way, but it's great because the videographer we had, like, we come out. It was at the Museum of Art. The reception was, and we did the sparklers and everything going out to the car. And the car was not supposed to be my parents with my sister in the back. And it's funny because they said I just kept going through the sparklers. And so the videographer queued up Sweet Home Alabama as I'm running through my arms up like that.
Wow.
I thought it was great for material after the fact, but Trina didn't care for it at the time.
All right. You're a dad.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing has been about your children and your foster children. Where dad jokes. Do you have a go-to dad joke or like a riddle? Like when you start to get to know these kids, and you want to like kind of show off your material.
Gosh,
you have like a go-to.
What does a camel wear in the woods?
I don't know.
Camouflage. So that's one I've had since high school. I was on like a Laffy Taffy wrapper.
Yeah.
But
you always remember it.
Always remember that. That's probably my go-to is that one. But no, there's probably so many jokes that aren't appropriate.
I try to. I've got like a few riddles. I got like 4 or 5 riddles that like anytime I'm like around some kids, and I just want to stump them or just give them something to think about. I'll drop some riddles on them.
So Hayden the other day at the table, he has a joke book he got for Christmas.
Yeah.
He's like, "Dad, what do you call this?" And I was like, "I don't know." And then some of them I didn't know. So as he's telling me and I'm repeating him, I had Google going. I'm like, I don't know. So what does a camel wear in the woods? And then it's like, it would show me. I'd tell him the answer. He's like, man, you know them all. I was like, yeah, I'm your dad. I'm supposed to.
So earlier you had mentioned Stevie B's, and I wasn't here to get to experience that. And that just got me thinking the question I had written down, and Stevie B's and that kind of establishment flashed through my mind. But either your birthday party or like a birthday party you went to kind of growing up, you said you grew up in Stevenson, which is near Scottsboro. Did you have an epic birthday party as a kid, or did you attend one where like it was just memorable? And what made it memorable?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my birthdays were just at home and friends around or something. But probably I can remember a friend of mine I grew up with. We may have traveled to Huntsville or Chattanooga one because we were kind of in between both. I think it was a place called Lasers or something. It was like laser tag, and I can remember that place being awesome, going to it and doing laser tag because I wasn't used to having that experiential birthday party. So I would say that would probably be the most memorable. It's probably the only one I can remember, honestly.
Come home, you can't wait to tell your friends or your family like it was incredible.
Oh yeah, and we actually Hayden's birthday last month. We took him to the Rage Room in Huntsville, and I'd never been to the Rage Room part where you just break stuff, but they have a Nerf battle zone, and I'm like, this can't be. I mean, it's probably a bunch of tires set up or something, but we did a birthday party there. He wanted it, and it was probably the most fun.
Really?
As an adult I've had. Like I was like, hey, I'm going back here with the kids too. So it was like an escape room set up. You can climb through windows and doors and stuff. So that was really memorable just being a month ago.
Was there so the Stevie B thing, when I think of like even Pizza Hut used to always have, or maybe they still do, video games in there, like whether it was the tabletop Pac-Man or Galaga or something. What was there a favorite like where you would go play an arcade game somewhere kind of growing up or even as an adult?
Well, it's funny you say it because I remember the Pizza Hut we used to go to had those games there. Because it's a small town. We didn't really have anything like kids around here have right now. But as far as a favorite game, I mean, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That was a good one.
That one. Let's see, what was the other one? Paperboy, I think. was one.
Paperboy, yeah. Yeah, that's a
Paperboy.
classic.
Yeah.
Like Pole Position, Turbo, and those ones.
And then The Simpsons. I know The Simpsons had a
yeah.
game too. But those were the three I gravitated towards. I know used to go to Pints and Pixels, well, a handful of times probably, and those are the ones. They had all those games in there. That's great.
That was 6 questions.
That's it, man.
That was it.
Felt like 2.
I know, right? Well, I think about time to wrap up. Do you have any shout outs or any final thoughts? Or let me ask you, I got one more question. If you were to write, maybe you've done this, you're going to write an ad to try to attract fosters, right? And trying to kind of on the recruitment side. Maybe you've run ads. What does that ad look like when you guys, if you have put them in on social media or in a newspaper or on TV? What is the message that you're conveying?
I guess we haven't done one necessarily, but I know the posts that resonate the most on social media are those that are kind of the numbers behind what's going on. Because I remember I posted something last year just for our county, because the last numbers I had, Madison County alone, out of 67 counties in the state, represents probably 8 or 9% of the kids in foster care in our state.
Wow.
And that's a huge number, and that the number is like 470 to 500 kids roughly. There's only 200 or so licensed homes, and throughout the state, there's 6,000 kids in care and only like 3,000 homes. I mean, there's a deficit, and there always has been. But I would just say if you're thinking about being a foster parent, then you've got something down deep inside of you that you can conjure up to help these kids. Like we said earlier, it's about the kid. But if you really, truly want to make a difference, don't just think about the reasons why you can't. Think about the reasons how you can, and not so much that, I don't know if I could do it, but how can I do it? So, and just know all the resources, support, whatever it is, it's there through us, through others here in the area. And I would just say, take that leap of faith, and you kind of crawl, walk, run type scenario. You can do respite for someone for a few hours. You can do emergency placement. But I say, if you're like, I'd get too attached and you're worried about that, you'd be the perfect parent.
I was listening to some podcast on fostering and adoption, and there was, I think, the guest was likely, older, in maybe her 60s or 70s, and because they were young, their youngest child was like 17 when they started fostering, and they actually have like 17 kids in the house. And I guess they're just, revered in those circles as just really good foster parents and such. But they had, this goes back to a lot of what I had asked you, like both parties, the spouse has to be just as committed. And at the time, she didn't think her husband would ever come around, and then he did. But there was a period of time where she had reservations and was kind of saying, I don't think we can do it. And then her son was one of the sons that it was a teenager, said, well, it sounds like then you just need to leave it up to God.
Yeah.
Right. To kind of establish that faith and hope in yourself that you can do it. Like, so, and then they were like completely taken aback. And it was one of those moments where they realized they had raised a good child, and how incredible that he would have this perspective and advice, and essentially like, okay, well, you're a human, a natural man, and this is something where I think you need divine help.
Oh yeah.
And that was what did it for him, to realize, okay, yeah, we're not in this alone.
Yeah, we could have done it without our faith and community. I mean, faith is a big part of why we do it. I mean, that's to care for the least of these, and they're kids. You look back on your childhood. Okay, did you have a good childhood? That's great. These kids aren't able to unless they have someone that can help provide that to them. Because some haven't had birthday parties, never had a birthday party, and they may be 6 years old.
Yeah,
and things that we take for granted, it's like, just kind of step back and like, all right, let's do this. This kid deserves it.
All right. Any final thoughts?
I'll send you the foster application
Okay.
in just a bit. But no, I appreciate the hospitality here and just having me on and kind of sharing a little bit of our story. But no, just roll tide and be a foster parent. That's all I got.
Yeah, we should have done this at the beginning, but I think you reached out to me, and I guess if you had told me, I have forgotten. But how did you come across the podcast, and then what kind of led you to reaching out?
Well, I'm a big podcast person, constantly on YouTube. I can't remember. It may have been on LinkedIn, actually, but either YouTube or LinkedIn. Somehow I saw one of your videos, and it was the guy with Trash Pandas. It may have been, I think it was the first episode.
Ricky,
yeah.
Wow.
Something popped up, or maybe it was an older episode, and then somehow I got back to that one. But yeah, somehow I saw it, and I was like, "This is kind of cool." So I went to your website, checked it out, and I'll shoot you a message.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure people knew that, and I've commented. I think anybody who's ever reached out to me, they either have already been on the show or they're scheduled.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's what I want. I want people to look at this as an outlet to say, okay, I get that chance to come on for a long time. And again, we didn't pull up everything that you've written, but you can type in Brandon Bishop, and you're gonna get stuff related to what you sent me, right? Your ties to these agencies. Go to his LinkedIn and check out the other organizations you support, and you can do some research, and you'll stumble upon the blogs and the articles that you've written. But I think it's important to, I've probably asked you a lot of the similar questions you've been asked or you wrote to, but then it's a chance to really, really dive into those answers.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate it. I thought it was going to be a long, long time. And I was like, what am I going to talk about? Here we are.
It just happens. And there's still more and more we could get into, but alas, it's time to get home and take care of those other responsibilities.
Those kids we talk about.
Plastic kids. Yeah. All right, Brandon, have a good one. And thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bud.